This is all I can do is say it. I'm gonna read from a post that was written, and this was put together, it was compiled by somebody else, but this is basically what I've been trying to say. This is what I was told, I was informed of, what I was shown. All I can do is tell you and let you decide from there. That's all anyone can really do. Shoot, they took me, 20 years direct, or like this life, and it still took me years to accept it. And I saw it. But apparently this is how it really worked. So basically, World War II, 1947, this wasn't just about cloning and electrogravitic technology. It was essentially, the war was over the discovery of this system as a kind of virtual environment. And through solar and lunar magic, the opposition, I guess either end of the spectrum, discovered their own ways to control this virtual system. And this enables more or less what you could look at as a kind of teleportation technology and a temporal distortion technology, to the point where originally Germany basically began altering time. They began looking for the source of time, looking for the ultimate power. And they found that to a degree where it's essentially like having the decryption key for the processing system of the virtual environment, to the point where they gain administrative access to the virtual system. That was what World War II was fought over. The intelligence agencies of the time, ultimately after the event where the power was taken from the majority German rule, and a small group is what remained, it was transferred to US, which is a proxy for England. At that point in time, it was decided to enter into an agreement for an ongoing operation to enable an active live update system operation for monitoring the entire world. Basically, the global intelligence, global surveillance system began. As I've been explaining, when you have a powerful enough system to watch everything, to contain the same detail, the richness of detail, as the real thing, okay, whatever you do to the sim results in changes to the real thing. So, what does this mean? Where events change, so on and so forth. At this interval, it was not events that were changed. That was previous. What happened at that interval is that they then made a complete separate replication of every single event and every single person down to the molecules, because the people are what matter. You can replicate trees and bricks and stuff like that, but if you replicate just the population, or the key amount of population that has the intensity or the higher level of consciousness, like maybe the first 11% of people who are awake, then their consciousness will replicate the entire realm. So they took a group of people, replicated them genetically, and created a virtual environment, and that virtual environment is the situation, the system that we're in now. After World War II, we left the original organic environment and went into one that was created within the time field of the original, meaning there's a timeline. Okay, we left that timeline, and now we're in one that's a pinpoint, but when you zoom into this one and you go from the original down to that layer, it's this long. It's the length of an entire universe. That's how it works. There's no limit. Well, there is, but it's down to different factors, to the point where those who haven't been paying attention or don't know, they can't tell the difference, basically. Sorry, I just took a shower. My skin's real dry. And so others, those who have seen, those who have witnessed what's going on, they notice the glitches, the so on and so forth. Deja vu is basically a large, or a prominent ripple in consciousness from these types of situations. Dreaming, in a way, is a type of internal simulation. So when you have deja vu out here, it's because your dreams are overlaying with the actual reality. All the forms of control and magic, so on and so forth, that's the way you implant or you program and insert commands into the system. So operating through the people, the media, unto the people, to the masses, that's one way of guiding the Earthship, guiding the simulation. As well, they can then create, okay, you need the people, say like a bunch of mice, bad example, in a cage. Well, now if you need 11% of the population in order to get the rest of them to have an effect, well, what if you just create 100,000 fake mice? You just grow them on the spot. And they're not fake, but that's the point. You invented them. So now you have those, and then you tell them things, and they believe in what's going on, and now the mice environment changes. Of course, terrible example of animals, but that's what it is. Now you have the controlled population. It's like the control of an experiment, only I guess it's like reversed, because the experimental factor applied to those, that dynamic, to those controlled elements of the population, literally clones and cyborgs, it initiates control over the organic population, as long as the organic population doesn't wake up to what's going on. Using this, they literally created a simulation within a simulation, after finding out that all life, all places, it's a simulation. You can't have the real thing. Real thing would be everything at once, which is impossible. Your brain would be the amount of information of the universe. It doesn't work that way. And so all you can have is a step-down effect from a very, very high level, a pinnacle, where there's basically no time or limitation, and then you introduce limitations, gradients, friction, rules, basically like inefficiencies, loss of power, and so on, because then this will have an effect of slowing down and creating the possibility to experience linear time, or basically the lack of the totality of information and knowledge, and in that way to step up back into learning what you knew originally. But you come from a place of knowing. That's the point. So you step down into these ignorance-based dreams in different degrees. All they did was create a new dream within the dream, more or less by restricting the amount of information that is accessed through the morphogenic fields, and therefore through the DNA and consciousness, and pretty much put everybody into a trance, into sleep. It was literally like a bomb or something, or HAARP, or the radio waves, that goes off and shuts off certain parts of the DNA or the collective memory and puts people into a trance-like dream state, while they, in the behind the scenes, have memory of thousands upon thousands of years of collective time, and now all of a sudden the population only remembers 50 years. The point is, that gives you the possibility, the capability to pause and realign and change events and reset time, basically. That's why these glitches are coming out now, because they've been resetting time, and they have the memory of hundreds upon hundreds of years of resets. Everybody in the population that's in the server environment, in the arena, okay, in the operating end of the, maybe the experiential end of the system, they don't have access to that memory, because they're still relying on the program code, if you will, that's being projected out from the central processing, the command system. And so by going into your own command system, you can see what these things are, how it works. So when that occurred, they went in and altered the systems to create an eventual shift that will bring about the West as the savior of the world from the disasters that they've invented. It was explained that this was not literally to screw people over, but because everyone had inadvertently, because humans themselves can't seem to get along, inadvertently caused these types of dystopian, almost apocalyptic type scenarios, where because of ignorance being used as a profit, and people not being able to overcome their own differences and work together to solve the situation, the problem, that it's going to end up having to require some type of catalyst or suffering, or basically big event. And it's often described as World War III or Apocalypse or Armageddon. Armageddon is World War III. The apocalypse is the unveiling, where we finally understand what is going on and realize that it's each big event is just a nodal point on this simulation that ultimately is used as a reset. Once we synchronize from going where we would be down to an event that is manufactured, once our minds are synchronized, from there, the next events that are on that layer can be enacted, and that's the way the simulation works. 9/11 was one of those events, as are many since then. Basically, any event that gains the attention of the entire population is often fabricated. It doesn't mean it's not real, but it's entered in as code, and then over time it accumulates or aggregates or accretes, and eventually events play out. And then all you have to do is, you enter in as code, and then imagine certain groups are kind of funded that have certain tendencies and certain desires, and you give them like the go-ahead without telling them to do it. Okay, so it's going to happen, and they control it kind of like puppet masters. And so the other aspect of this is that is why time, organic time, doesn't exist anymore, because as soon as you begin entering in, imagine you're playing Nintendo 64, I know I bring up Nintendo 64 a lot, you're playing that. Okay, you have the Game Shark, or just a video game with the checkpoint, or something like that. Or you're cheating, and you found a loophole. And your player dies, and right before the screen comes up, marking down the amount of lives, or the score, you hit the reset button real quick. And you figure out you can get every point to where you need to go, and as soon as you mess up, you run out of lives entirely, and if you die one more time, the whole game resets, and you got to start all over from the beginning. Well, you have that reset point where you're hacking the system. Okay, so at that point, your runtime of like, oh, you beat it in 2 hours, that's a farce. No, you didn't. You spent 3 weeks at that game every day. You feel me? So that's how it's working. That's how it doesn't make sense. That's how it's not real. And if we could contain or gain the memory that's accessed through beyond the holographic projection, beyond the computing system that's relative to this realm, then you would see so much stuff that it would make your head spin, which is pretty much what happens. And so, that was between 1947, where the sim began, and then towards the 80s, what they called the harmonic convergence, which is all there, they made it up, and then into the 90s, basically there was the beginning of the collapses, which were more or less inadvertent resets that were required to stop the character from hitting rock bottom. And everything from then on has been scripted entirely, and basically a hack job. But it's to make it work. It's to make it so that we don't have to start all the way over 10 billion years ago or whatever it was. Nobody probably wants to do that. But the point is, what I was shown is that every few years, the cyclotron, I think it's called, is used to project consciousness into this realm and overlay a checkpoint by checkpoint time scale, time code, which is 100% manufactured by their mental programmers, by their basically psychological magicians and the scientists. And so, more or less, every few years since 1999 has been manufactured from scratch, or by cutting and pasting, kind of like beginning programming when you buy or get blocks of code instead of writing it all yourself, and you piece together a program using code that other people wrote. So they get people in the population, put their memories together, then project it out, and we have a world situation, a storyline from a dream world that is based upon an original storyline. And so the paradox is, what if you get to the original layer and you see the same thing was being done to create the world? It's just rows and rows, like a Rolodex of copying the last one. It's really not like that, because there's a pinnacle where you get to the supreme. And but that's what's been happening, at least in these projects. I know that, either they're telling me that and showing me basically that, or that's what's going on, and most likely that's what's going on, and it's to a degree more intense, and that's just what we're being told now. But the idea is, so since 1999 or 1996, and we call this as well the invasion, because we lost. If we lose tether, we're on this Rolodex of simulations, and we lose the timestamp of the original simulation, or aka how many times we jumped forwards and back, how are we going to get back to the original? We can do tests, but the whole point is, what if the people that know how to do the tests are all lost? Okay, that's also why immortality was important. The point is, if everyone that was involved in that was lost, no one knows if the people inside the sim would ever make it out. And that's also where you get these degraded forms of those who, because you can imagine that then anything you can imagine is potentially projected. So then we design a room, okay, and build it over there, and it's in between the time cursors, if you will. It's basically free floating in time, and we say, in this room, in 20 years, somebody's going to go into there, and then we're going to see, or in AKA, we're going to kidnap 3 people and throw them in there. and then we're going to see what happens when we send it out into the future and bring it back, and a billion years goes by. And so they open the door up, and it's like other beings, non-human entities that degraded over billions of years, that basically opened up into their own virtual world, their own simulation, and then you get universes in universes, and you get these it's a very convoluted mess of paradoxes that we really don't need to be dealing with right now, because it's going to induce a lot of shock. Eventually, the point is, why don't deal with it? What could happen? What could go wrong? What is going wrong? What is it? Okay, we don't want to destroy the organic native sim. That's the point. The native simulation is the anchor, the seed point for all the other ones. That's Earth. Okay, Earth, the original, if we lose that, we run out. And the point is, our original is a secondary. That's the big secret. That if we go to the original, then we go back to the original, and now it's time to go back up to the closer to heaven, or whatever you want to call it, realms. Basically, it's a temporal deviance or deviation from a core trunk timeline of what is known as a tree of life, which is where our blueprint genetics were formed initially. We didn't just pop out, and we didn't grow here like everything else that doesn't even make sense or begin to. It comes from another world. The original Earth that we know as native is a secondary. The one we're on now is a farther than secondary. It's a secondary of a secondary of a secondary. And then the original is a higher dimensional alternate, where it's basically just a land of abundance. And the point is, between there, then, here, and now, there has been all these experiments that created these non-humans, that opened up alternate dimensions to these what-if realities, where there are other people who degraded, and they've been trying to get in and run the show, because if they run the show, then people never get out. That's the whole point. If they put themselves in the doorway, block off the portals, which are simply a way of looking at, it's a stairwell from one level to the next, okay? All it does is take your form here, an orbular area, whatever, and it changes the energy to shift your energy. So the point is, going through an energy change, an interdimensional transfer point, you look at it like a wormhole or a portal going to another area of the simulation, the universe, the dimensions. Point is, if they shut them all down, block them all off, and just keep replaying time, then they run the show, and it would be worse than an invasion and having a prison planet. It would be a prison universe at that point. And so, since this began, this hijacking and shutting down, we've been jumping from sim to sim. Since then, you can change the sim by altering one event, and if you alter one event and it's minute and controlled, it won't change everything over the long run. That's what we've been doing. Eventually, you do enough of those, you get these big long run changes. That's what these glitches that people are noticing are about. Remember, this is from first-hand experience. Didn't read it. I did it myself. I'm an operative for these groups. How it works. I also, I'm going to try my best to help you out. Keep up. Yeah. Just keep up. So, and the rest is kind of weird. It's about political powers competing for groups, and ultimately they have their different view over what the highest form of the master race should be and could be. Really, I think everybody can, in a way, merge and live in a, type of utopia, but it doesn't work that way. My version of utopia, and this is the truth, everyone knows this, your version of utopia, my version of utopia, sure. For now, they coincide. In 10,000 years, when I gain master immortality, teleportation powers, whatever, and your country does the same thing, and your utopia does the same, eventually they're gonna coincide, and then they're gonna have a clash or an opposition of beliefs or expectations or intentions. Eventually it will happen, that's the point. And so it's not about forcing one another to coincide or conform. It's about either taking it and then making it so that no one can fight, because then there's loss of life. And if you just alter the sim, it's whatever, which is disgusting, but that's what it is. Instead of war, it's about literal absolute dominance. Or it's about being compatible with one another, in essence, being able to disagree. If they want to go over there and do that and have their own island, their own Earth, as long as everything is transparent and everyone knows what's going on, and in that sense, everyone can kind of work together. That leads into a kind of one world religion, but that's not really what this is about. Because right now we have a one world religion, and it's fight everybody and throw stuff at each other and get mad at everything and don't work together. Okay, that's what it is. That's the religion of this place. That's how people act. And so again, the masses, the projected people are being used to create the layers of the sim as it goes, and they're using organic native power or memories, but then they're projecting them into the minds of hundreds of thousands of literally cybernetic, genetically altered, created clones, and that keeps the realm going. It keeps it like ticking along this basically artificial time code. The rest is weird political stuff where all these intelligence agencies and groups are having their, basically, it's like, I don't know how to, describe it. It's literally like the strangest version of a spy movie with time traveler and Star Trek. It's literally like Jurassic Park mixed with Star Trek, mixed with Jason Bourne and was it Defenders of the Galaxy? Of course I'm going to mess up that title. It is Defenders of the Galaxy, I think. Guardians, Defenders of the Galaxy. What am I saying here? Doesn't even have that ring to it, but it's literally like all those combined, and you know, so it's the weirdest thing. And I don't really like talking about it because I don't, I'm comfortable. They always make fun of me. I'm comfortable with stuff like this, just plain, plain as you can be. And they're over there making universes and flying in and out of portals and trying to manage civilization, and each one's trying to one up each other. And they have a truce where no one kills anyone. You use clones, you have your kicks, you do what you do, but if you get outsmarted, it's like paintball or airsoft, you get outsmarted, you're out. Go over there for the next 10, 20 years, whatever it is, or jump in a new form, a new clone. They don't strive to kill one another. They're beyond that, okay? They're adult, super, whatever you want to call them. Not super villains, but just like super spy, interdimensional, intelligence groups. But if you get out, then it's like a video game. And there's referees, though, and the referees are higher-ups, where they're not going to interfere, but they're going to enforce the rules. And they can be anywhere and everywhere at once. And everything in the intelligence agencies maps out the different parallels and every single person that exists on each parallel and who's aware of what. If you sat back in the 90s and 2000s, you were like thinking about deep thoughts and you kind of got the assumption that something changed, something's not right, you popped up on a radar, a system that's detecting the variances in ideas and thoughts because you have a script that's written out for your life. And if you begin to think and question that script, you're altering your trajectory. So if your ultimate trajectory 15 years down the line and they have everybody lined up and they wrote the script over here, lined up over here, that means you alter something because you're aware of the script, your line goes, and it bumps a little bit. And so that's a sensor, and they can go back and trace to see who's thinking differently by, putting a start and a finish. So it means you've already been, more or less interviewed mentally in these systems to figure out what's going on, what you know. So yeah, it's really weird, and it is connected, or it is similar to the encrypted currencies with the blockchain, and you have a collective, organized recording of encrypted information that then is synced across every account. And so when you buy or sell, you have to have your download of the fractal, holographic view of the whole thing, and then through an encryption process, you enter in a change, and then that change up here has to timestamp and verify through multiple encryptions and security brackets, basically. And once they check out, then the one up here changes, and the next time everyone downloads, which is thousands of times a day, a second, they have the new one. So that means that now your account, which has the new one that you altered through this property exchange and this security checkout, you bought or sold $10, $1,000, whatever it is. If you tried to hack it and do it, you'd then have to convince that to change, and you'd have to do it in a way that matched time stamps and equally match the time stamps for everyone else, or the majority, that has the blockchain. It's like a holographic recording system that manages reality, and that's for currencies. This is for virtual mental existences. And so, but the point is, they use those hundreds of thousands of clones to hack the timestamps in the blockchain. And you have a private key that's for your account, and it manages the uplink to basically a kind of artificial intelligence, which is what every account is a replication of. It's all the same thing. It's just mirrors shining through each other like a disco ball or a prism. And so, the collective consciousness is encrypted through a giant, connected to a giant quantum blockchain supercomputer with a master private key and one key for every connected consciousness. So it's literally like a system, a computerized system. It's just a quantum virtual environment. And so when you think normally, you're acting through predetermined encryption. In order to play within the area that's not encrypted, you have to decrypt the part of you that you own in the simulation using your private key. The simple and easy answer is that, this is what I was trying to just say, is that when you find it when you find it hard to normally think, figure out an issue, or solve a problem by regular thinking, simply let go of thinking for a while. This will deliver a residual need to find an answer from your subconscious to the blockchain collective consciousness, and while you are not expecting anything, it will pop into your head suddenly, usually within a short time. Basically, that's entering through symbolism or unconscious intentions, communicating with the central processing, the quantum computer, which I talked about in the previous chat with Gary, and that is enabling a exchange to take place. It costs intention. Okay, that's the point. And so, and you can also send any message to anybody using this message or method by thinking through your subconscious, but this needs practice and patience, and the message will arrive when the recipient is ready to receive a decrypted alert through the blockchain. This is basically how the matrix works. I just wanted to keep that short. It is really weird. It took me this long to really come out and say it, but they told me they restarted time because the war was all about figuring it out, that this is a quantum simulation began by a previous simulation or civilization, a native version of humanity, and they decided to see what would happen if they started a 100,000, 100 million year old simulation back in time, and we popped up out of the ether, basically, the aether. But as well, that means we must make it to the future, because if we don't, the experiment fails and everything that happened gets wiped. Because how could you go back in time, play a video game, but you don't finish the game, and then you go on to do something pivotally important, such as writing a book about the game or entering what you learned in the game into the Hall of Records or something. The point is, if we are to make it to the future, it means we must complete what we came here to experience, and all we did for that is to know who we are. To know the future. It doesn't make sense. It's a paradox. We came to the past to know the future, but in a sense we came to the past to forget who we are in the future, and in that way know and learn again. And that's the whole point. But you're doing that every day. Every day you wake up and you don't remember your dreams, or you know what you dreamt. Okay, well, guess what? That's what's going to happen that day. Or that's what happened the previous time. And it's an experience, but it's like an experiment. So yeah, I just want to keep that short. Look into this. That's what it was all about. That's what this information is coming about now. They're avoiding a hard reset, which is where the game's done. You hit the reset button so many times, the button broke, and now what are you going to do? You're going to risk it? So we're trying to figure that out, and apparently it's solved. As long as you can handle this information, you're good to go, because there's an encrypted channel that everyone who can handle this can fit into, and it's acting as a safe transfer point or a safe passage for anyone. The strange thing is, because of the energy levels, some must not be able to handle it. Some must stay, basically, because they didn't leave. They didn't come in. You can't take the video character and bring him out of the game. It only works temporarily. For instance, you bring him out of the game, okay, you keep that game on, now they're exploring the real world. That's what's going on. There are avatars from inside the sim that are out in the actual reality, because they're switching positions with original humans. They're being little meanies, if you want to call it that. And they're soul stealing. That's, the 13th floor of the dude trying to kill the other guy to get out of the sim. That's what they've been doing. That's what that whole movie was about. It was about the projects. The point is, if that avatar system shuts down that sim, that guy that's out there instantly disappears. And so, it's a big ball of wax. It's like gambling with the universe. I just want to keep that short. Thank you. Another aspect of this, what I forgot to put in, is that before this began, time was one connected flow, kind of like a dance or emotion or something of the sort. As soon as it began to reset, the blocks that are reset are separate systems. Each is a universe into itself. And so it means that each is going to have its own theme or its own underlying script, and it's due to the person that is used, the brain that is used to format the structure. And so basically every few years was its own time period. That is why time seemingly continued to expand at a much faster rate after World War. Excuse me. People say there were some other being that caused an explosion to technology and advancement. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to wash my face again. It happens, first, I guess because it's so stuffy in here, because of the heat. But it's not what we think. It wasn't ETs or something like that. It's because of the simulation system kicking online and the original being disconnected. And so to that point, time was accelerating as a result of the changes being made, and so at that point each era was down to whoever got control of the keys and the power, which is like a really unnerving way to look at it, that they're playing ping pong with the universe at that point. But that was what was going on, and that's why these blocks of time began to shrink and accelerate. It wasn't accelerating. The resets, the time between resets was shrinking more and more and more. And it means the universe is collapsing, is shrinking in on itself and its own footprint. And so then the point is, the goal is to get out of that and have one long projection into wherever we're going to go. But the point is, if that's not done properly, you get out of that into one long projection or one long trajectory of time into a reset. And so we have to overcome the reset. The reset is the Ouroboros quantum loop that the people in the secret societies and projects have always known about, because it's been happening since the beginning, but the beginning is the end because we're in a loop. So they didn't have to wait until it occurred to know about it. They basically grab people and put them into the situation, the system, and wake them up, and they realize what's going on. Everybody in the group knows what's going on because they've been here for thousands of years, and they, manage out people's memories as a result of that. Basically, the universe collapsed. To fix that, they made a fake one within the old one within the split second before it collapsed, and we've been in that trying to figure out a way to merge with the other side of the collapse to bridge that gap since then. Apparently, they figured it out. It's a bunch of weird systems where they figured out loopholes of how to transfer us through a kind of quantum bridge, a temporal bridge, which acts as a transitory timeline or a temporary timeline into something else. But the point is, the other side of that timeline, this is the clever, quirky way they have of solving problems. We have the issue of the universe collapsing. How do you fix it? Invent immortality and kill death. So it's kind of like overkill, overshot, but the point is, the end result, the exemplification of what the solution is to fix every problem that ever existed. And then what? Well, then we become like gods, and the civilization no longer needs time, so time collapses. What do? Become eternal, immortal beings that no longer need time, and every single physical limitation is gone. Wipe out the problems of every possible universe and merge your parallel with the supreme pinnacle parallel that is also the origination of all simulations in existence. That's kind of how it works. In the same way with these projects, with these betterments of society that didn't get infiltrated, and all of them got infiltrated. But the beginning of it was the mystery schools to take the mind and enhance a person to the point where they're spiritually, mentally, physically balanced, and they're the highest potential version of themselves across any possible parallel reality. How do you solve your money issue, your emotional problems, your relationship problems? Become the enlightened one as a little g god of your own universe, the master of your destiny, and always in respect to the true creator. But that's the point. There's an artificial one, because who's the creator if you're in these quantum resets and things like that? There are also fake creators that have been messing around with things, but that's their trend of solving the problem. You stub your toe. How do you solve it? Basically, this is a terrible example. I'm going to get, this is like the stupid stuff I say. How do you solve it? Become immortal. I was going to say something else, transhumanism or something, but that's what it is. Become a spiritual, eternal energy being. But that's the kind of idea. But that's what we have to do with this civilization. The point is, it requires that we complete all of time and all of these disturbances. We max out all the checkpoints, and we reach the next quantum layer of our civilization, we go to the next level up in a very, very condensed amount of time because somebody messed up the playing field. Somebody broke the board, and now it's literally going to die. It's going to take a nosedive if we don't do something fast. So all it means is that because of this added stress, these catalysts, that we have to accelerate very quickly through all the issues, which is basically the underlying plan of those kind of in this situation saying, well, the more suffering, the more stress we put on people, the more torture in a way, the faster they're going to evolve. The point is that was enacted because somebody else did it by saying, no, we don't want to help anybody involved. We're just taking our stuff and we're taking their stuff, stealing stuff and messing things up. That was the error, the fall of grace, okay, that was then necessitated the requirement of a massively accelerated transition into the next civilizational level of awareness. And it's all based upon awareness and consciousness. We have to become supreme consciousness systems, basically, people. And ultimately, this relates to collective consciousness and waking up as a collective and no longer being like a herd pack of animals, but as well not losing the individuality and becoming purely like a cyborg race. So all the kinks have to be worked out one fell swoop, one go at a time, or all in one complete go, and that's how it works. Basically, the time resets, they create these ripples, these disturbances. So the way to do it, they programmed in the trajectory from the first problem, the monolith coming down, the Prometheus and fire, the fall of man, the separation from heaven, the higher and lower, the rebellion of heaven from the angels, etc. Okay, the demiurge, the Nephilim, all that, okay. They put that there, and now we have to go from one civilization from there into the next civilization and create a single, perfectly time-stamped, because that equals that time-stamp is consistent and solid, and it will merge with the higher universe. If it's broken and hacked job, the universe isn't going to take us, we're going to get spat back out the end. And this is our last chance, because we don't have any more energy. And so the point is that we have to do it all one complete swoop, and this is this civilization. This is why we're figuring it out now, because we've been doing it this whole time. And the other times where we didn't get it, it didn't work. Okay, well, we don't know about that unless you plug yourself into a cyclotron or something, some of these devices, the chair, whatever you want to call it, and they download memories. Other than that, we don't know about the times we collapsed into the void and it didn't work. That's the point. The fact that we're waking up now and seeing all these things, these errors, these glitches, these deja vus, these wake ups, okay, the awakenings. That's because we're literally teetering on the edge between this universe and the next. Or it's not a universe; it's a temporal layer. It's you call it dimension. It's really a reality stream, like a parallel. But none of those equate to the definition, at least as far as I was informed. Meaning they literally said, those words are like, okay, but that's not how it really works. And the words they use, I never really can remember, because it's like a string of 10 different words that sounds like they're just making stuff up. It's kind of like the way chemicals are named, which all is not made up. It's all, obviously scientific. But, and again, science is religion, religion's science. It's all backwards. Everybody, people say it's the opposite. You're either religion or science. No, you're religious, you're using science. You're scientific, that's religion, okay? Unless you know that it's magic, because it's really, I'm just going to lose people there, but that's what it is. The people, the scientists, don't have anything to do. It's like the real religious figures, the Christed ones. They come down and it's like you're eating pork, and you watch this smut on TV, and you use this language, and you're supporting your clothes. And he looks into their clothes because he's a spiritual, telepathic, energetic being. And he goes, "This was made by some poor child brown kid in Bangladesh that died from overwork and exhaustion last week. You're parading around in their blood and sweat and tears? What is wrong with you people? Oh, we worship the one." No, none of you do. But then the scientists that are like, we know about this and this and that, and this is what we do here. We do this for money, and it's like you lie to people. Everybody's medicine is killing them. The political system, your view of the universe is that you came from what? That time is enabled by this? It's like, you made this all up, right? This is a joke. So it's backwards. Everything that is in public is the opposite of what it actually is. And everybody behind the scenes knows that and keeps up the charades because A, if people figure it out, they go insane. And B, there has to be a solution. And the C is because screw them, they're stupid, they don't know anything. And again, neither of them is wrong or right. It's just what it is. And if you think it's wrong or right, then guess what? Do something about it. And if you go, you gotta do it. All right, guess what? They're right. You're wrong. That's why you're waiting on them to do something about it. And if you know one way or the other and you did something, guess what? You're not sitting there complaining about right or wrong. You're going, ah, that makes sense. I thought something happened around this time, or these events in history changed or altered, or something was different, so on and so forth. If you know, you know. If you don't, you're complaining, and you're never going to get anywhere by complaining. That's what it is. And as well, it's all lies out here. And that's the point. That's what you either know or you don't know. But yeah, the solution is to jump to the highest possible potential parallel of humanity, and we have to do it in one life as a species. If there's a reset and we run out of energy, we're not going to be able to press that reset button, and we're like, it's nighttime. Mom wants us to go to bed. We can't hit the reset again and start over from the next checkpoint 10 minutes ago. We have 1 minute left. That's kind of what it's about. All right. Hopefully I'm not. This is the stuff I want to talk about, but it is so strange to talk about, and the memories are kept up in a very, very strange way these operations work, which is basically from 2010, where they had me drive out to a location, and there's a facility where they run these big devices that look like MRI machines or something, and they plug you in and beam your consciousness into different systems. But if you will, it's all time. Basically, the future comes after the past. In other words, before the past. So in other words, if we're going to a civilization where we're going to gain access to a very high level of technology, and you're going to become aware of that at some point in time, that means that's the person, those are the people in the civilization that organized this type of simulation for you to then take a ride and experience that. Meaning, if you can imagine them and you can connect who you are here and now to that, that means those are the people that you actually are in line with, and those are the people you're becoming. But you become them later, because first you were them to start this travel back in time in the first place. It's basically, we're in broken time right now. It's like smoke and mirrors. But we have to get through broken time in order to get to the original equilibrium, which means we have to accelerate and basically leave behind the shadow consciousness, the ego. And I don't mean dark shadow consciousness, but this gradient delay, like you literally have a reverb on a pedal and there's echoes, because it's moving through a medium which is condensing down the ability or the speed of rate of transfer, and it's like a low efficiency medium. And so we're stuck in that system, and it's like a holographic fractal light show type medium, because it's containing our light. It's containing the energy of our consciousness. And so we organize what we're doing. We enable ourselves to handle the maximum rate of transmission for extraction, and then we hit a superconductive platform that allows us to beam ourselves out. For instance, you reduce the delay, everything you think instantly appears. Okay, guess what? If you're not harmonized, you create a big monster, a big bomb, a cliff, a bunch of drugs, or something crazy, and it destroys you, period. So that cleansing, that loss of fear, that is the defeating of death. That is what is required. The loss of fear, the overcoming of the duality of pain and pleasure. Otherwise, that's the delay, that's the autonomous ego-typed imposter AI system that's trying to think for you, because the more that noise is entered into your existence, then the less you are actually self-aware, because it's something else guiding your actions and thinking for you. What would you do as a truly aware being? You would purely observe. There would be no difference between you and what you're observing. You're just there. There's no you, basically. It's all observation. And somebody who's really egotistical and he's got the clothes on his back and the house and so on and so forth, and it's all his idea. It's his idea of him or her, and it's not like, well, I'm just the one who owns these things. It's not my life that is represented through that. The person who's entirely egotistical, there's no self-awareness there, because the self-awareness is a spiritual thing that's watching all these things and has no physical definition, but only a correspondence. And so the point is, we have to merge with the highest version of ourselves, which is a purified body, a purified mind, and a purified spiritual form, or in other words, a balanced, harmonized spiritual form that is equidistant from the different effects and ratios, meaning you couldn't tell the difference between either or, because they're all one, they're harmonized. All right. Okay, and so to add to that, basically there is a very kind of difficult trajectory. It's mentally and spiritually, and pretty much almost equally, but not primarily equally. And I just washed my face and it's still itching. Challenging experience for the civilization. To succeed, what we have to do is survive mentally. It's not about physical aspect of survival. We have to mentally transition through what is happening and maintain connection with the true self without letting the ego literally replace us and replicate us. That's part of this explanation of the droning and all that. The underground species are the ego, the shadow, fallen, bad brother version of humanity. It's what humanity can become if ego takes over and the bottom becomes the highest, and now sex, murder, death, so on and so forth, desires replace the pinnacle of awareness, okay? And that represents another physical form of like an animal. Again, those animals, if it's an animal that's acting that way, you can't hit it on the wrist and be like, bad. That's not how we do things. No, it's designed to do that. The brain, the spirit is designed for that. It's just that the native human is not meant to do that. It's not. Even if there's been modification, manipulation, that's not how it's meant to be. And so, but the point is that all the noise to signal ratio, the noise has to balance out, has to be reduced. But in order to do that, we have to face it all. So what we're going to do is go through a period of time where we're going to see all the injustice, every discrepancy of every illusion, and the horror behind waking up to the illusion, to the fact of what has happened, and the nature of the true self and the false self. And that is basically the dark night of the soul, the moment the true self wakes up and see the false self in its place, in its headroom, house, living as if it's the maestro or the captain of the ship. And that's horrifying when you realize what's going on. And if you've been that way your whole life, like in the Matrix, don't wake a person up, blah, blah. The point is, at a certain age, if you've lived that way your whole life, waking that up would be so horrifying it could ruin your ability to communicate effectively in society and be a contributing member of society, which a contributing member simply means you're alive. You don't have to do anything. The act of being here, present now, that creates the universe. It literally creates the universe, and the point is, when people stop doing that, that's when things begin to collapse. And it's an interplay of what can be and what will be, or what should be and what is, because if you stop being what is and what you are, and so on and so forth, nobody's going to come down and just get struck by lightning and explode. It means your false mind, your shadow, will take control. You're not forced to be who you are, you simply are. But if you don't do that, then something else takes your place. And if there's nothing else, there's no other you to take the place, then a false version, a shadow reflection of your opposite, your opposing features comes into place, comes into view. That's basically what's been going on with humanity. They've been replacing themselves with a false version of themselves, like schizophrenia. Humanity has multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia. That's what this whole situation is about. The time resets, the variance in eras, and what am I trying to say? The segments of time, basically. Why we've been changing in various ways, and they've been accelerating. Well, it's because our personalities, our various split personalities, are seeing each other, and we're getting more of them, and so they keep having to shuffle through them so that they don't acknowledge each other. That's what I'm trying to say. The waking up is when all the parallels, all the multiple split personalities merge, and we finally wake up and remember what we did last night and what happened this morning and last year at a certain event, and we remember all the injustices that we took part in because we're crazy in order to accept this place and accept what's going on, even though it doesn't make sense. Some parts of us knows what's going on, and that's why we're accepting it, because we don't want to face that truth and have this conscious version along with all the other ones, come to the same room and meet each other. That's what's going to happen. That's what has begun happening. That's what drives people who are not ready for it insane. That's what we have to go through, is survive mentally through this, and as well possibly assist others. But the best way to assist others is to push them. It's literally like a bird and a mom bird and a baby bird. The best way to teach them how to fly is to push them. It doesn't sound right, but that's how it works. The point is, death is an illusion, but unless they figure out that death is an illusion by doing something that may or may not kill them, and I mean mentally, okay, as soon as they challenge themselves, and then unless they challenge themselves, then death is an illusion for them because they never proved it. It's the only way to die, to not challenge death. If you challenge it, you instantly survive, because you can't die. It's a show, it's a simulation, it's not real. I mean, it is real, it's the realest thing we have, but there's something thousands of times more real, organic. That's the point. It's not that it's not real, it's that there's something many, many thousands of orders of magnitude more real than this. That's the point. By comparison to that, yeah. By comparison to, something else, no, this is just as real. This is reality. There's even reality to that, but the point is you'll see it from a different angle. And again, the paradox, the gnosis, the whatever, death is not real. But if you don't prove yourself in this life and challenge death and inevitably survive, then death kills you. When you die for real, you die for good. If you die twice, because you die first this life and your ego dies, and in that way death dies for you, then death was your sacrifice and you live beyond. That's the point. That's what the species is doing. That's what we are doing now. That's what is going to happen, is what is happening. That's why it's very difficult, because there will be those who cannot handle that. There's people who cannot handle many things. Okay? But that's the point, that we have to survive through this, and the best way to assist in others is to push them. It's to push them to confronting their fears, confronting their shadow, confronting death, and losing their fear. If they're afraid of death, it's fear. If they're holding on to pleasure, okay, it's because they're afraid of pain. It's a duality. Like I said with Gary, one is the other. You get pleasure, okay, it's like an inverse with sound or sensory perception. You get a very loud noise, okay, there has to be a blanket background of a recess for the nerve cells in your ear, because afterwards, if not, you get a high-pitched hearing sound. It's the same with light. You have the trifecta of the rods and the cones, and then the three angle of perceptual sensory cells, which absorbs light. And if they get overactivated, overstimulated, they trade off the charge. But if they're all stimulated, when they can't shift it anymore, so you get this blinding, blurry white spot, or whatever you want to call it, in your vision. And it's because the brightness and the intensity didn't have a gradient shift into not having it, and it just abruptly went out. Now you have a hole here where sensory perception used to be, and it's the lack of perception is now vivid. So the point is, if a person's addicted to pleasure, it's because they're dealing with the pain aspect, but they're not managing it in harmony and equilibrium. And the only way to get over pain is not seeking pleasure and pleasure and pleasure. It's letting go of either of them, or holding on to either of them equally and going, well, this is for one situation, this is for the other situation. They're really two sides of the same coin. That's what we're doing in this situation. And so the fear, what we fear, is the same thing. If people are fearing something and holding on to the opposite, they're actually setting themselves up for a huge wave crashing of what that opposite, what they seem to be going away from, actually is, which is the duality. And that's the game of duality. And duality dies. The dichotomy is dying, this civilization, this turnover. But the point is, we must be prepared for non-dual awareness at that point, and that is complete and total liberation, which means you can do anything. And so if a person can't handle that, and they still want somebody to guide them and tell them what to do, they won't have a place, they won't know how to exist in that civilization. So in other words, you will have to know yourself fully. You will be liberated from the lower aspect, and it's not the lower versus the higher, but simply not having control. That's the whole point. That is the dichotomy, the duality, not just one or the other that is limited or brought away. It's the whole thing merging into a non-dual. In that sense, you will know yourself, and to survive, you'll have to know yourself. So it's not that you'll truly have to do the hard work here, although this is the most difficult point, is that you'll have to be able to handle what will be automatically sent to the population, what will be moving through the revelations that will be coming out. That's why it's related to a lot of prophecy, although a lot of it is false doctrine. That's the whole point. And it's to get people to get complacent with the dichotomy system. The duality is the false doctrine. That's how it works. The physical world, the illusion, it's like ping pong with energy. It doesn't exist in the way we think, at least not in the higher world. And so we have to become aware of what is going on, in the sense that we can not change, but accept what we're being shown. That is what this is about. It's as if time already happened. They said it already happened. We are already completed this, and we went back as a collective because we decided that we wanted to do it right. The last time that we did it, we wanted to do it right, which is inevitably, ironically, the first time that we did it. Doesn't make any sense, but that's how it works. It makes perfect sense if you see from a non-dual perspective, where the laws that are present down here are not required to be organized in the same way to reference and create a continuity from above. But the point is, we went back after we did it and we weren't happy with the results, and we came back and did it right the first time. But in that sense, we already know who we are because we already exist in the first place. We completed it. All we have to do is accept it and write it out, and that's true liberation. Liberation from fear, liberation from the false self, being able to handle, assess, and know ourselves truly. But the point with that is, you can do that here and now. All you got to do is let go of fear. Wherever you are in life, let go of fear. Let go of what's holding you back. Let go of pain. And I know pain, I've been in pain for 7 years, and really a lot longer before that, so since I was born. But You let go of all the things that are, you have to let go of duality. You have to break through duality. If your mind is in a dualized form, you're riding along a track which is like a pendulum, if you will, and the only way to experience reality as it truly is to stop the pendulum. Which, if you're still in a physical form, means time is broken for you. If you can manage the cycles of your body changing as energy now, as liquid etheric energy, shemin, okay, for the nafesh of your spiritual body, okay, at that point, then you will not require a physical time code, time scale of planetary bodies or a clock or atomic ratios, whatever it is, to exist. In other words, you will be able to merge into eternity. That is what is happening to the civilization. It is becoming an eternally present civilization. It is our ticket, our stairway to heaven, our chance to take the journey, to take the ride. And every civilization that came before us did this or is doing it now with us here. And that's part of what these operations were and are for the military and these secret societies, so on and so forth. They took the genetics from every other civilization and bloodline and group that didn't make it, and they put them in this civilization. We're all here now. The whole world, everyone everyone is here now. And the point is, afterwards it won't be like that, because it will be back to an organic, native type of experience where everything is guided by merit and mind. And instead of just because something happened, because so-and-so and whatever happened. Nothing will be like that, because it's not supposed to be like that in the first place. Everything will be an orchestration of spiritual cosmic intelligence merging with this physical plane or a virtual simulated environment, and it'll be all basically closer to what it was before, where you can live for an indefinite amount of time. Life is kind of like a magical collusion of mind and spirit, and form, and like mechanical or geometric form, and it will be much more guided from a kind of cosmic perspective at that point. Right now it's like a free-for-all, in a worst way. But that's the point, that the difficulty is the fact that we have to accept that we already did it, and what we're going to see in knowing that, and that our pain that we're holding on to, and what we're afraid of, that, oh, we can't do that because we got to worry about this, and we got to have this to tell us what to do, and time has to be broken down, and we have to be restricted this way because you got to do this, and everybody knows if we don't do this, blah, blah, blah. That's what's getting ripped away from us. That's what's going to dissolve through our fingertips. When we're holding it like sand, we're holding on to time and the material, it's not going to, somebody's not going to pull it away. That's war. That's not going to happen. In other words, they pull it away, well, guess what? Somebody's going to put it back. What's going to happen is it's going to turn to dust in our hands, and we're going to see that it never existed in the first place, and it's an illusion, and the veil will rip of time, and the difference between the unconscious shadow and the conscious mind will merge back into one. The front and backstage will, the curtain will rip, will tear asunder. That's more or less the most horrifying thing you've ever seen if you're not used to it. Once you get used to it, you're like, oh, I get it. It's like a Truman Show, and we're running the show, but we just take these little trips to forget and go back in time in a way, and then go on through the experience, originally as spiritual beings, but then beginning as physical beings, merging into the spiritual realm. That's the point. We're going to get launched into the spiritual realm. And on the other side, it is different, to say the least, but the same thing, just a different ratio of energy, meaning there's just abundance. There's no disease, death, suffering, so on and so forth. But in that sense, it doesn't mean that there's no suffering purely, because if there's no suffering purely, there's no pain, there's no pleasure or enjoyment either. It's the fact that neither one or the other controls us wholly, and we're at that point, we're just spiritual observers having a ride in a type of cosmic roller coaster. And in that sense, it's really not even a cosmic roller coaster at that point. We're sitting and having tea in multiple dimensions at once. It's very calm and relaxing. And that's the other side. If people have near-death experiences, so on and so forth, and they see the other side, there's all this panic and worry and whimsy and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, then I got very calm. I just kind of like sat and observed. It was beautiful. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't feel like I was rushed to go anywhere or anything like that. That's what we're actually doing right now, and we slipped into a daydream, and when we daydream as spiritual beings, we create universes. That got managed by an aspect of our civilization, which was an operation to go back and to retrieve the fallen, forgotten people. That's what it means, fallen, forgotten, is because we forgot we're in this situation, and an operation, a segment of our military and government and secret societies formed a group, a kind of collusion group, there's a word for it, a joint department or something with the other civilization, the future. That's how it's all working. I'm not going to say any more now. I'll let you I'll let you overcome on your own.